Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Alex Burnett, co-founder of Canna Innovations. Thank you very much for joining me today, Alex.
Thanks, David. Good to be here. Good to see you.
Well, before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us, subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Alex, I typically like to start with a little bit of background. And I think that you have a particularly cool origin story. What was it that brought you to cannabis?
Well, about 3 years ago, I left the corporate world and started looking through LinkedIn, looking for possible jobs, and I had planned on starting up a consulting business for public corporations and using my lean manufacturing background and my data analysis background, and came across an article on LinkedIn where they were showing the use of lean manufacturing, lean production, lean thinking, and horticulture and greenhouses specifically. I thought, this the cannabis market in Oklahoma is really starting to take off, and it was going to reach a saturation point where I knew that people in Oklahoma were going to be looking for assistance and trying to improve their operational efficiencies, and so lower the cost. And so that really is what started it, is realizing that there was going to be a market, not only in Oklahoma, but across the United States. As you guys know, it's starting to spread, starting to be legalized in a lot of different states. And so I knew the market was going to be taken off, and also knew that they would be looking at trying to improve their operational efficiency and reducing cost. And that's been my background for, I've been in manufacturing for 30 years. Over 30 years. And a lot of my environment while I was in manufacturing was in very, very cost competitive industries.
In your previous life in the corporate world, were you working with large scale manufacturers, small manufacturers, and kind of how were you helping them out?
So in the last 3 years of my position with a public corporation called Teledyne or FLIR Systems, I was a director of continuous improvement, and so I was responsible for 15 different sites. These were large electronics manufacturers across 5 different countries, and so I traveled probably 60 to 70% of the time, and was a kind of an internal consultant to these sites. And so we would go in and do lean manufacturing events, Kaizen events, value stream mapping, 5S events or workshops, and so we were focused on driving improvements at those locations. And so did that, like I said, for about 3 years, and was able to drive a lot of improvements. And I just love it. It's great to see an operation when you first start thinking that they really don't have any opportunities to improve. And a lot of people think that. I've gone into several locations where they think that they're operating at the highest level possible. And what I found in every case is that there's always an opportunity for improvement. You may think you're the best in the world, but there's always some room for improvement. And using lean thinking, lean manufacturing has always driven improvements. I've never seen that not happen. As long as you have management commitment and good personnel that are anxious to learn, anxious to improve, and that's normally the case, is that you'll have that kind of staff that's willing to jump in and learn as much as possible. So it's been very rewarding to be able to see those kind of improvements, and then also see some of the folks that may think, I had one gentleman off of the assembly line who was dead set that lean manufacturing was not going to make any difference for them, and that they would never achieve any improvements through some of the lean thinking, lean principles. And he came out to be after probably 9 months to a year worth of working with this company that he was actually the leader. He was the advocate. He was most outspoken about lean manufacturing and took the lead from there. And so it's really rewarding to see those kind of things happen, and that's why I love doing what I do.
Okay. How would you describe the state of lean manufacturing in the cannabis industry?
Well, I tell you, it's rare to see it anywhere except for those for MSOs. Some of the large MSOs, you'll see that they'll have some continuous improvement departments even, and within those, they'll have some lean manufacturing experts, and that are focused on exactly what I'm doing. But it's rare. It's you don't see it in the mid-size. It's typically only in the large MSOs. But I'm seeing a lot more interest in reaching out to people like me, trying to get some assistance in improving their operations, even small and medium size.
What are what are some of the what are some of the low hanging fruit for those small to mid sized enterprises when it comes to lean operations?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've always seen, and a lot of people think that upon first sight, first understanding about 5S from an organization standpoint of organizing your facility, some people see that as not very productive. I don't expect to get much out of that effort, out of a 5S effort, but I can tell you that in every case, I've seen huge improvements in that. And once you understand that process of 5S, and sorting out those things that you need to run an operation, and if you're not using them on a regular basis, then you move them out of the operation. You clear that up, because just thinking about additional product or additional tools that you may have, that if you're not using it on an ongoing basis, then it's a waste. You shouldn't have it in your operation. And so, that's part of 5S is sorting things out, getting rid of what you don't need, and then arranging it, and setting it in order so that the most frequently used tools are the most easy to get to. It's closest to you when you're running a particular operation. If you're running a flower room or whatever, it's there at the flower room instead of some central location. So I've seen that happen a lot. So shine is another aspect of 5S, making sure that everything is clean and maintained, and everything is put back in its place. So you always have a place for your tools and products and inventory, raw materials, and everything goes back in its place. By the end of the day, everything goes back, and everyone knows where things need to be placed. And then the other part of 5S, it's a 5-step process. That's 5S is known for. And so the next step is just sorting. I said sorting out, but standardizing those techniques or methods, and how are you going to maintain the order that you've established, and set some expectations. A lot of times people will take pictures of how a operation is set up. For example, an area where your tools are located. They'll take a picture of that, and then they'll display that picture at eyesight, next to where those tools are supposed to be located, and that is the end of day look. So at the end of the day, the expectation is all the tools will be back in that same location. The advantage of that is no one is ever wasting time looking for tools. You always know where they are. And so that's part of 5S, is just trying to minimize the amount of effort that was required in maintaining and going to grab a tool, whatever it may be, minimizing the amount of time it takes to get that job done. And people don't realize the amount of time they waste until they start doing this workshop, and it has a huge impact. And then you want to always, after you standardize, you always want to make sure that you maintain that or sustain it. And so you have someone responsible for ensuring that everyone is adhering to the plan. And so you've established a plan of how you're going to organize your layout, for example, your work area, where the tools are going to be located, and where they're going to be set up at the end of the day. And so someone is always responsible for auditing that process and just letting management know, letting the team know how well they're doing. If you don't do that, then what happens is it just craters. That initial workshop, that initial effort just craters, and you don't get the long-term benefit from that. So, 5S is the biggest one that I would say in the cannabis area or industry is that people can gain a lot from just doing that. It seems simple, but when you think about it on a personal level, I always give an example to people about using your iPhone. And if you delete an app on your iPhone, sometimes it'll shift all those apps to another page. And so you always it's aggravating because now your muscle memory is affected. You're not able to find that app that you've always used. It's on the second page, upper right. It's no longer there. And so when it impacts you personally, it's a pain, right? You feel the pain point. But when you're at work, it's less of a pain point. It just feels like work. It just seems like it's part of work. Well, once you get into lean thinking and understand that the customer is not paying you for the extra time it takes, right, to go find a tool, it provides no value to them. So why are you wasting your time? That's the opportunity that folks have, is that they want to go, eliminate those wastes.
When you talk about a huge improvement, huge opportunities, are we talking saving minutes, days, weeks? How much are we talking in terms of savings?
Yeah, it all varies depending on how large the operation is. But you can think of an assembly area for electronics, for example. You can save hours because of people that are always hunting for a tool that's not in its place where it belongs. And so that adds up to a lot of lost productivity, a lot of lost capacity, right? And so I would say it's more along the lines of hours. Once depending on how large the operation is, right, the number of employees they have, and if you're talking about an outdoor farm or a greenhouse, or you're talking about an indoor, so the amount of real estate you have to cover. I mean, I've seen large greenhouses that are spread out, and they didn't have any organization to their tools, and so you just waste a lot of time during the day. Go on from one greenhouse to the next trying to find a tool where it should be, in a greenhouse, or multiple tools in a greenhouse. It just depends on the size.
So, where's the difficulty? I mean, is that on the manager? Is that on the individual employee? Just because when you talk about putting a tool back where you got it, I mean, that was like, I think the first lesson I learned as a child. So where's it falling down?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's at the individual level. There's no expectations. You probably have very very well organized parents. Maybe that was your case, that they were very strict and told you exactly where to put things, and so they had set the expectations, right? And so as long as management sets the expectations, or your lead grower, for example, sets the expectations of where things are to be located, then you have compliance. But if there's no expectations on here's our SOP, right? Here's our SOP is really what we're talking about, is SOP for tool management, right? Or for inventory management. So it's really just about setting those expectations, and that's part of using 5S, is in setting those the set in order, and how if you're using a shadow board, for example, or you're using they'll call it a Kaizen foam for inside of a toolbox drawer, and they have all of the tools located in specific areas, and there's a cutout for it, so if something's missing, what's missing. Otherwise, if you just had a whole drawer full of tools, you spend a lot of time searching through, visually just searching through this whole mess of 500 different screwdrivers or pliers or something like that, when you shouldn't be wasting your time visually or thinking through, well, like maybe it's in this. You always know because you have this muscle memory. That's one thing that builds up, like on your iPhone. Our muscle memory on iPhone builds up very quickly because we're always using it, right? So that is the thing that people benefit from, is just having that muscle memory and knowing how your workstation is set out. So you always know the screwdrivers on the left-hand side, for example. You're not wasting time. It's just a muscle memory, automatic. You go to that location each time, and that's the way it should be.
Are cannabis operators more or less willing to bring a consultant into their operation to help improve things than some of the other industries that you've worked in?
I think they're probably less and less interested to do that unless they have some experience with lean manufacturing or some previous experience in manufacturing and have heard of the term, and they know people that have done it before. Without that good understanding that they can have some benefits, or without having some good case studies. And that's one thing that I've done on my website, is I published several of our case studies where we went in and made improvements on a harvesting process and came up with ways to minimize the excess motion that they were going through, and assigned certain jobs to certain people instead of having just a cluster of activity, which really didn't provide any value to the customer. And we were able to quickly demonstrate that some improvements we made and reduced their harvest time by 40 to 50%. So we see the improvements, and if people see case studies, that helps, I think, and they have hear some testimonials. I think that helps. But yeah, I would say that other industries are more open to the lean thinking.
Is part of it the disconnect where people hear lean manufacturing and 5S and they think, oh, that's for the manufacturing industry. I'm not manufacturing. I'm just growing cannabis.
Yeah, yes, that maybe so. I mean, that may be the case, but interesting you bring that up. I actually have found a book called the Lean Farm, and this is a husband and wife team out of Indiana. They're not in cannabis manufacturing or production, but they're in just a vegetable farm in Indiana. And so they had the experience of some one of their friends that was in manufacturing, and brought the farmer into the manufacturing area and gave them a tour, and then the manufacturer offered to go out to their farm and spend some time with them. And the guy has done an outstanding job of documenting how it can impact farmers, which is directly relatable to either indoor or outdoor, obviously, and in greenhouse. You can gain something from lean thinking. It's not just manufacturing. It can be lean cultivation, lean processing. So there are similarities where you can gain from the lean thinking, regardless of what industry you're in. There are people that are using lean thinking in office work. So it crosses across a lot of different industries and operations. So just the principles of understanding the value that your customer is looking for, and then understanding what they are actually paying you for. And if that's not an activity that adds to the form or the function of the product or service that you're providing, and it's not something the customer is willing to pay you for, then it's something you ought to be considering as a way to eliminate it. But there are a lot of things that we do in cultivation that are a waste. Customer's not paying you to do it, but you have to do it. So in those cases, you need to figure out the best way to become efficient as possible, and reduce the amount of time it takes to do those activities that are considered waste from the perspective of a customer. So that same thinking crosses over, all different industries, and just understanding the value. And one of the things that has crossed, over industries as well, as what I've seen, is that there's an understanding that 80 to 90% of the activities that are done in any kind of manufacturing or cultivation are non-value added. And in other words, the customer wouldn't be willing to pay you for that activity. That's not what they sense is being value to them.
Was that 90%?
Yeah, 80 to 90%. Yeah, it's I had the same reaction as you did. I about probably 15 years ago, I brought in a consultant to work with us at a manufacturing facility in Stillwater, Oklahoma, where we were building handheld explosive detectors. And I brought him in. I had experience with lean, and I was looking for a consultant to come in and help us drive some improvement there. And we did a value stream mapping process, which helps identify, value from waste and all the tasks that you do. And so it's a couple day process, and we look at the cycle time for all your process steps, and we roll that up, and we find that only 5% of the activities and tasks that we had going on at that operation in manufacturing a handheld explosive detector was value added. 95% of what we were doing was non-value added. It was just, it just blew me away. And I had the same reaction as you did, is people just don't realize that when you look at the hard definition of value add versus non-value add, it changes your thinking. And that's what I've always told people, is that we're going to go through a period of transforming your mental perspective of your business from the way you've been operating for years and years to now seeing your operation completely different, because now you see it from a standpoint of this value add versus non-value add, and understanding what's a waste from the customer's perspective. And so, yeah, it was eye-opening for me. Just I had the same reaction as you did, and I had question the consultant about that, and he actually said, no, that's typical. He said 5 to 10% in manufacturing is normally what value add percentage is of your total. And I've done value stream maps since then, and I would tell you that I've seen that number hold true. Is and I give it a looser number of 80 to 90%, but I have seen that repeat across doing value stream maps in Norway with people there that are developing and producing the smallest drone in the world. It's a small 4-inch helicopter that's a military grade drone, and called the Black Hornet. And so we did that there, and came up with very similar numbers. They had a lot of waste in their production process.
So what type of value stream mapping would you do specific to the cannabis industry, and how does that process work? Kind of just start with a blank sheet of paper and see what you do, see what everybody does day to day?
Yeah, good question. So it all depends on what the customer is, or the client is looking to accomplish, and we can do it one of two ways. Is one, we could look at the entire process, and typically what I do is I bring in like a 4-foot wide, 5-foot wide roll of butcher paper, and it's just a brown craft paper, if you will, and we'll put it out on the largest wall we can find, and we use Post-it notes, and we start going from the very beginning of the process of documenting the information flow, the people, and the process steps. And for each process step, we document cycle time and understanding how long it takes to set things up, and how long does it take to actually do the operation, bringing in any waste from a standpoint of waiting on materials, how much inventory that you have maybe at each process step, and maybe that's between harvest and trim, if you have a large amount in the drying operation. And then also looking at your raw materials that are coming in, your fertilizers, your chemicals, and how much of that you have at each process step. And so we lay that out, and visually it's eye-opening. I would say it's almost like 95% of the time, David, I see that people get a much better understanding of their operation. I've had people in the defense electronics arena that come up to me after a value stream map and say, "Hey, Alex, I really never understood our process flow until going through this value stream mapping." And same thing in cannabis. People think they know it very well, but then there's some aspects of it that there's always an area where there's maybe an information flow or lack of. So that's where we have a value stream map and putting the post-it notes out, and then working through that, and then having some discussion about defining this is our current state of the value stream map, and then going through some training to understand the lean thinking and the waste associated with that, and how we can become more efficient in our value stream. And so you then move from a current state to a future state, and draw a future state map of this. This is what we'd like to look like in a year. And so that's kind of the process. But it depends on the client. If they want to focus in on just the cloning operation.
Alex, was it during one of these value stream maps that you came up with the idea for the Trellis Trap?
Well, I was actually working alongside some cultivators, and during the harvesting process, and I was actually trying to understand their process, their challenges, and so I was elbow to elbow with the harvesters, and testing out another product, and we realized, I saw him kind of getting frustrated with handling trellis and the trellis netting, and so I made the comment about, would it be nice to have, a 5-gallon bucket with some kind of a membrane with a single slit in the top of the membrane, so you could take the trellis material in and not have to worry about it coming out. And because he was always just trying to compress it down to a 5-gallon bucket, and they just didn't have the space for a large, 45-gallon trash can, and a lot of places don't. There are a lot of places are small, and during the harvest, it's difficult to use a 45-gallon trash can while you're going through harvest, and that's the benefit of the Trellis Trap. So that's how it came up, and then it just kind of went from there. I built a prototype up. We have this the internal comb structure, which is the trapping function of the Trellis Trap, and so we spent some time fine-tuning that, and we're just amazed at how well it worked on the first attempt. It took us a while to find the right type of rubber membrane and the right configuration to make it work, so that the trellis material did not come back out. And so we're just trying to design this so that without using your second hand of trying to get that trellis off. And this is after also watching hours of video from other cultivators that I had visited, were having the same problem, and in a lot of cases worse. But everyone was wasting time going back and just throwing it on the ground or throwing it on the table, and then going back at the end of the harvest and during the reset process of then going back and picking it up again. They already touched it once. Why are you touching it a second and third time? So, that's where I get back to this. The customer's not paying you for this. Why are you doing it? So that's the benefit, and that's the ROI payback from, a special purpose-built tool that's a productivity enhancement tool that can eliminate those secondary and tertiary, touches. And there's really no need for that kind of activity. And so it's, I've seen some of the best cultivators that I've had an opportunity to work with that now are cutting the trellis, and immediately disposing of the trellis. And it's in one kind of motion, cutting each filament. They have a special technique of how to do that. And they have kind of a lead crew going through before the harvesters are coming behind, cutting the plants, removing the top layer of the trellis netting. And that lead crew are the ones that are using the trellis trap. And so they only touch it once, So how good are you if you're touching it, 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 times? Your team is tripping on it on the floor, which I have seen an owner almost lose it on the floor, almost hitting the floor, just from trellis materials, So that I knew there was a benefit to a tool like this, and so we're pushing forward with the trellis trap. Yeah.
What was the response at MJ Biz this year? And, have more people been bringing the Trellis Trap in-house ever since you made its debut?
Yeah, it's continuing to get more acceptance throughout the industry, and we were seeing that. We had an opportunity to meet the Jungle Boys at MJ BizCon near the Athena booth, and they loved it. And I've also given out a couple other demos to some folks that I had met there, and getting really good feedback from them. We're also in the process of developing a lower cost model. That'll be a similar function. It won't be as good as what we have now, but it's something that if people are looking for a lower cost solution, they can get into a specialty tool at a lower price. And so we're still working on that. Just had the first prototype printed out this weekend, actually, and so we're working through that and hoping to get that out in probably the next 3 months, I would say.
Is the current version really expensive? Just because when you talk about taking all the hassle that people had in terms of getting tangled with the trellis beforehand, I don't know, when it comes to ROI, was it just too difficult for people to see past that initial price point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, where we're not getting as much volume as we were expecting. The ROI payback, is like 1 month to maybe 6 months, depending on the size of the operation. If you're a small operation, you're doing very few harvests, then it's going to be a 6-month payback. But if you're a large operation, and like one I have here, they have 3. They have 3 trellis traps, and they run two every time they harvest, and one is just as a backup and used it for non-harvesting type of operations. But yeah, the original one right now is priced at $199, but the ROI, like I said, is 2 months typically. And so that one, I don't think you had a chance to see it, but this is the trellis trap. And it has a grip. A regular bucket is not that easy to handle when you have a rubber membrane. So we put a grip around the entire periphery of that, and then the trellis material, as you've seen before, can go through the rubber membrane, and then the rubber membrane will invert and then wipe that off. And you don't have to worry about it. If some of that trellis material is still hanging out like this, it'll eventually all get in there. And on the inside, once it gets compacted, I don't have a lot of it in here, but the bottom opens up, and then inside you have this coma structure that is the trapping mechanism. And so now, once the trellis netting is inside the trap, it just doesn't come out. I've had people think they could get it out the top and reach in there and grab that, and it's just hung up inside. And so there's only one way out. That's why we had to have the exit lid, so that they can pull it out. And once they pull it out the back end of this, it looks like a bird's nest. And that's what was amazing to us, is how well it works just by compacting the trellis maybe once every 10 to 15 times you put trellis netting in there, it just starts to nest together. And so it has done a fantastic job. Everybody who uses it understands the value of it and are more than willing to pay for, maybe more than willing to pay for the price. So,
Okay. Does it get like fairly filthy? I feel like just from all the trellis going in there, and how easy is it to wash?
oh, it's really easy to wash. The whole thing will come apart. So the black ring comes apart with all the bolts. The inside, the combs actually are flexible enough to come out. So each individual comb just snaps into place. And so you can take that completely apart and wipe down the interior and the exterior. And so it cleans up. I've seen them be used in a really nasty greenhouse, and are able to be cleaned up very easily. And the rubber membrane. Now, the rubber membrane will eventually wear out, although I'd say I'm seeing probably 6 months lifetime on those, if not longer. But all of that can be, taken apart and cleaned.
Okay. You had mentioned going after some other markets with the Trellis Trap. Do you have any other ideas for other inventions that you might have cooking under or behind the scenes?
Yeah, we do. We got several things in our on our product map, and so it's just a matter of having enough time and money to go invest in those new tools. But we're excited. It's a market where there's not a lot of people playing in this area that can take the lean thinking, lean principles, and see where a custom tool can provide value. And so that's where my background from engineering over 30 plus years in manufacturing as well. I can come in and look at an operation and pretty quickly see where there are opportunities for them to improve, and then also see where there may be a custom tool that might be available, maybe designed and made available to help the cultivators or help processors.
So, throughout the design and development and the manufacturing of the Trellis Trap, were there any surprises? Like, working on the product design side of things, was there anything that kind of gave you pause about the whole process?
Oh, we had some challenges. The development process used 3D printers, some large 3D printers, and so the current product here is 3D printed, and so it's being about 12 inches in diameter and about 13 inches tall is large for a 3D printer, and so that took us quite a while to develop. We did hire someone out of Stillwater, Oklahoma, that did the mechanical design work for us, and it took us a while to figure out how to design and tune the combs, and so there's a unique design to the combs so that they function correctly. And then, as I mentioned, the rubber membrane and getting that to a configuration that works perfectly. But other than that, just really the 3D printing and we're going that way now as well for evaluating our other products. And we have some other products that are using the same patent, utility patent, and that's in the consumer market. And so we're looking at the fishing industry, the environmental cleanup industry as well for the collection of fishing line. And so it works well for that. And then exploring other filament based operations. So if there's any operation that uses like a filament, whether it be in a netting type of configuration or just a linear line filament, we feel like this design has a lot of advantages. And so that's what we're kind of pursuing, is looking at the consumer market, and we're just now starting to wrap up our prototype design on that and getting it out.
From a lean manufacturing perspective, how long do you think it'll take for cannabis to kind of catch up where modern manufacturing is now? Will they ever?
That's a good question. I think that they will. I think that we're seeing it right now in Oklahoma. There were at the peak probably 9,400 growers in the state. I think the last count I saw was, I think, below 4,000, maybe 4,200. So a massive decrease in the number of licensed growers. And I think that people are going to realize that as they get, the dust kind of settles out, that they're going to have to continue to improve their operations and reduce their cost, because prices aren't going to be going back up like they were in the heyday of in the wild west of weed in Oklahoma, as they used to say. It's just not going to be like that, and I think that's going to be the case across the United States. I think as it gets legalized in more states, you're going to start to see that. I think you're going to see that there's going to be more focus on improving, operational efficiencies, and the cannabis industry is going to have to get smarter. I always like to say, work smarter, not harder. And I see a lot of people working very, very hard in the cannabis industry right now, and there's a big benefit to approaching things differently, and using lean thinking, and using purpose-built productivity tools, just like every other industry, right? A lot of things are coming out that are productivity enhancing, and have in the past, new tools that are custom for a specific industry. And so I think we'll continue to see that. You'll definitely see that from Canna Innovations. We've got a couple, as I mentioned, they'll be coming out.
You had mentioned the decrease in licensees in Oklahoma. How would you describe the state of cannabis in Oklahoma? Is it up, down, right sizing? How would you describe it?
Well, I think I mentioned early on, I do data analysis as well, and do some programming within a tool called Power BI. And I developed a tool to dive into the Oklahoma industry, cannabis industry, just so I could understand it better, and because it was very well hidden, very difficult to understand. And so I developed this tool, and so each month I refresh the data. It's publicly available data, and I've been tracking the trends of growers and processors and dispos, and also patients. And one of the things that's been surprising is that the patient licenses have decreased substantially over the past probably 6 to 9 months, until this last month, and we saw an uptick. So I think it's, something's changing in the market. I think that maybe there's a second wave of acceptance of cannabis. I'm not sure what's driving that, but I can tell you, I was very concerned about, for friends in the dispo market, and growers in this industry, just because the customer base, the patient licensees, were dropping, and now we're seeing it to reverse, and so hopefully that will continue and stabilize, and maybe continue to even grow. Not sure why that dropped like it did.
Okay. Was that new patient licenses or just total overall?
Total overall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, total overall had dropped. Yeah.
Well, Alex, I really appreciate you taking the time. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to add, or anything in particular that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about yourself, the Trellis Trap, Canna Innovations, all of the above?
Sure. I just want to first thank you, David, for having me on, and I would like folks in the cannabis industry to understand that is, a lot of people think that they are performing at the highest level possible, and that may be the case on the cultivation standpoint, and producing good product. From an operational efficiency standpoint, I can guarantee you, and that's one thing I do, is I guarantee my results. And if I come in and do consulting with you, I guarantee that you'll be happy with the results. If not, I'll give you a 100% refund. Who does that? That's crazy, right? That's how confident I am in helping companies improve their operation, because I know it's possible. And if you're not happy, I'm not going to be happy, and I'll give you your money back. So I would leave it with that. Just realize that like we said, 80-90% at least of the activities that you have going on are non-value added, things that your customer are not, you're not paying you for. And that means you have an opportunity, right? So I would encourage you to reach out to us, look at our website, and understand more about what we offer. Follow me on Instagram. We do a lot of video on Instagram as well. So just check us out, and we'd love to work with you.
Alex, well, thank you very much. We'll make sure to have links to all the places people can find you in the description as well. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. Also, subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. All right, for Alex Burnett, co-founder of Canna Innovations, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. See you next week.